Now, Warren, we've got a slide tonight. We're going to be discussing basically each subject we're going to be covering every week with the common law course that's starting this week. So it's really, really important to just break it down for everyone to get a bit more clarity on what this is all about. There's no one better in this space than you, Warren. And I've been speaking to people actually all around Australia about this, and many people are excited. We've already got over 100 people signed up. And this just means that more and more people are going to be educated, informed, and taking their power back in their hands. And that's what we want, right?
Oh, yeah. It's honestly the only way forward, Jess, because what we saw happen the last few years, I think you're never going to get a better advertisement for the need to be self-empowered. And I'm sure that if people could wave a magic wand and go back in time to the beginning of this time in 2020, 3 years ago, you would be loved to have had a lot more knowledge of your rights, your common law, your legal, and you would have got through the whole mandate so much easier. And many people are playing catch up, reactive. It's like the boat full of water, and rather than kind of fix the boat, is throwing everything out because they're caught out. They didn't realize there were holes in the boat, and they didn't realize that a tidal wave or big waves were coming. So we know for sure, but governments now know they effectively did some pretty bad shit around vaccines and all kinds of other stuff, and they got away with it by and large. And I don't think they're going to all wake up and go, yeah, well, we feel pretty bad about that. That was a little bit rough. And, you know, Bill Gates going and saying, yeah, I shouldn't have done that stuff. Quite the opposite. He actually came out a few weeks ago and he's warned the next one's going to be worse, and he's given this whole big speech about it. And I mean, a whole lot of them are saying it's going to be another one and there's going to be this happen. So they're definitely getting people ready for something else. And I don't think it will happen the same way as before, but you can rest assured it doesn't bode well for the goodwill of things. I think there's going to be economic coercion combined with this coercion, and people just have to know how to deal with it. That's all.
That's right. And I just want to share from someone who came into the Global Wealth Club pretty much when COVID started happening. I was in the corporate world, and honestly, it really woke me up. It's what changed my whole life and my direction. And when I met Warren and everyone, it was a blessing, but at the same time, a curse because Warren's a nut job.
What are you talking about? Is it normal to hold hands?
Facebook, so I need to let everyone know the truth. You're never ever going to have anything sugar-coated from Warren, so I'll tell you that much. But I want to share with everyone here, the most important thing before you even discuss finances, wealth, and everything is your mindset, and is your knowledge, and is your self-empowerment. Because if you do not have that, you can have millions of dollars in the bank, you can have assets, you can have everything sorted. But if you can be bullied, coerced, and told what to do, and you don't know how to stand up for yourself, honestly, it's everything else just fades away. And I can't speak highly enough of how Warren teaches and our educators in this space from someone who's come from that place. So please listen to tonight what we're going to share with you. And if you haven't already, we'll share with you how you can actually join the course later, okay? Brilliant. So I'm going to do something very technical. Now, Warren, while I'm doing that, I'm just going to bring up the screen. Let me know if everything's okay here where you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, good. Oh, gosh. Here we go. All right, so let's kick off tonight. Now, if anyone has questions, please always put it in the Q&A box. We'll get to that a little bit later. Right now, what we're going to do is cover every week which subject we're covering. And do note, this actually starts February 2nd, tomorrow. So, it's still time to join us, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, correct.
All right, Warren. So I'm pretty much going to let you, take the lead here. But with common law and discovering your common law rights, obviously we have a disclaimer here. Do you want to take over from here, Warren, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll take over from here, and I'll just direct you guys to change slides as we go through. But the disclaimer is important because because my background on this is I used to be a lawyer. I was qualified to do it. I was licensed. I was doing it. I actually I was very much doing activism as well as part-time legal stuff and things like that, as well as my law firm. And I still remember the day when I was winning so many cases, thought I was pretty cool. I soon found out how the system worked. I had visits from the police at one stage. It was very friendly, like very, very nice people, very almost apologetic, telling me their boss had said they were going to shut me down because they didn't like what I was doing. And I was actually laughing with the guy saying, is this like serious? He's going, well, yeah, look, I know it's pretty, it doesn't sound great, does it? But he said, we just want people to follow the system and the law and speeding and all that. And I'm like, I don't think I heard that. So I went back to court and I just kept losing every case with the same magistrates who wouldn't even hear my arguments. And then on top of that, legal practice board were after me and kind of giving me, and yeah, they were all kinds of technicalities on just about anything they could find. And in the end, I was like, okay, guys, I'm out of here, and left the profession and never looked back, and got rid of my license to practice law, left on good terms by and large, and started working more on empowering people and doing things differently. So this is not legal advice. All I will say is my background as a lawyer does give me, obviously skills and knowledge, which I've used in the system, as well as the fact of outside the system. So I'll just share a bit more about that. So yeah, just go through, Jazz, just next slide.
No worries. Yep.
Yep. And yep. Keep going.
Well,
so, go back.
Okay.
So yeah, so
go
basically,
on.
yep. So basically what I was going to say on that was that, yeah, look, a bit more about my background quickly. I worked not just with the legal practice board and things like that and as a lawyer, but 20 odd years ago, I was involved in underground movements with people who literally technically didn't exist. And they thought I was a plant as a lawyer, but I really wasn't. And once they realized that, I met these former secret agents and guys who lived in visible worlds, and they taught me stuff that I still use to this day about how to deal with censuses, credit card debts, legal notices, how the whole system worked, the fact that the Holy Bible governed the system, how to use the Holy Bible in the courts, just all kinds of amazing stuff, which still to this day I use in the background privately. But now I'm just decided to just openly share, the mixture of, as I call it, the neo-Morpheus principle, work within the system, but also out of the system. So I'll let you ask your first question on this one, Jazz, and that's my background. Let's go from there.
Yeah, look, so I guess with common law and, its principles, I think what's really important right now is to establish what is so different about this course versus, for example, a lot of those other courses and groups that are actually being established around Australia at the moment.
Look, I think it's a little bit like, there's plenty of courses you can do on IT and on this and on how to make $1 million in 1 second, but the ones I respect with cryptos, for example, is people who've got some financial background as well as being willing to think out of the box. And the ones who've really helped me the most are people who are street smart. So when I got in the cryptos, I remember the two guys who changed my life were both very street smart guys with a lot of financial background and made a lot of money from it. So they were actually able to really teach me and show me that sort of stuff. So the big difference is I really, really don't like theory that doesn't actually work in the real world. It's my pet hate because it actually hurts people. So let's just say, for example, that somebody is going along there and they go ahead, see a course on the internet, go out and apply it. I've seen people go arrested, they go to jail, they get a bad time in their family and leave pretty traumatized and burnt and think, what was the point of all of that? So I'm a big believer in doing stuff that works in the real world. And the reality is there is stuff out there, a lot of courses that just don't work in the real world. And even though in theory, most of what's out there, not all of it, but a lot of what's out there is correct, it doesn't work in the real world. And there's some stuff that's just blatantly wrong. It just doesn't work. And it's not even legally correct. Like the number of people, for example, who kept going on state of emergencies are not legal. I'm sitting there thinking, what are you talking about? I mean, this is the whole problem. They are legal. They may not be lawful because they're abusing their power, but they're legal. They're actually applying ancient common law and moving outside the system using a state of emergency, which is written in every common law legal commentary you can see anywhere. So that was the problem. It was legal. So people were being told it's not and going and getting really burnt. Whereas I just accepted, okay, it's not lawful, but it's legal. I've got a problem. And I use that. And that was why I was able to deal with it quite comfortably. So that's my first comment on that one.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think, as we talk to so many different people around Australia, it's really, really important to just kind of be, have a good discernment about what you are actually taking on. And this is why this course has come about, and Warren and the team are so passionate, because I've personally spoken to many people who have got fined from the ATO, they've removed themselves from certain systems and they found themselves in a really, really bad position. And I think it's just really good time right now, especially with things to come, to have good discernment and really just, take your time and learn some things that it's more about self-empowerment, okay? So look, that's the main question there. Let's head off to the next one because I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So in regards to week 2 and government statutes, regulations and licenses, what is it that you're going to be kind of uncovering here for everyone?
well, it's not technically covered in week 2, it's covered quite a bit later on. But this one, it really goes through dealing with regulators, because regulators like this are a whole new breed of government, you know. They're very, they're effectively private bodies. This is where people get confused sometimes. And dealing with private bodies is very different to dealing with legal, constitutionally established governments and things like that. So the big thing we'll cover is some practical stuff I learned from dealing with the Legal Practice Board, helping a few of my friends dealing with APRA, you know, just privately, not as a lawyer, but just privately with friends, and just stuff like that. Like, once you understand regulators like this, they're a lot easier to deal with. So it's mainly going to be teaching the basics of what private regulators actually are. Because, for example, if you don't actually understand what they do and their authority, and I've seen, and these groups can be more vicious and a lot worse than governments. I actually find the ATO, for example, relatively fair. If you know how to deal with them, they're actually quite a fair body. And once you show them receipts and laws, generally these days they're pretty good. And I used to work for them, but even clients I've spoken to, when you know how to deal with them, they're actually a very fair body. They tend to follow the law over here. I mean, the IRS in America is a whole different story, but the ATO is pretty reasonable. ASIC are a little bit worse. They kind of tend to try it on a little bit, whereas these bodies can be a nightmare, as we saw with the whole, you know, situation where, I mean, and it was very cleverly done. They got doctors and everyone to license themselves and said, hey, guess what, guys, by doing this, you're going to have all these cool benefits and get paid all this money, and you'll be like everyone else. They go, oh, that's so awesome. And they joined it. And then they said, oh, by the way, you have to get vaccinated. And if you don't go and do all this stuff and make sure your clients do it, then we won't give you benefits and we'll deregister you and effectively muck up your income. Very cleverly done. Very, very cleverly done. And so it's learning to deal with that and understanding how these bodies work and how to deal with them. And I've successfully navigated these boards very, very well. Just knowing how to, first of all, get yourself, if you're in contract with them, how to deal with them. Secondly, how to get yourself out of contract with them. And thirdly, how to practically deal with them in the real world. And that's stuff I've got real life experience with.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that Chinese medicine and chiropractic and all that's under APRA, because so many of them folded and they're just so off the natural world. It's crazy. No, that's cool. Hey, Warren, have you heard, or has anyone heard about Co-Vision? It's basically the parallel kind of world now of health practitioners in Australia that are joining together to provide services, health services alongside. So all out, you know,
well, there's all this kind of stuff in the background, but you first got to deal with the existing body because they've got a lot more power. I mean, that's it's good. I think that's definitely a way forward, finding an alternative body. And I haven't looked into it enough yet to see if I think its model is going to actually work in the real world. But look, I think it's the way it's going to go. But there'll be alternative bodies that will create, and I think it's the way to go. But I can't answer much on that one at the moment. Yeah,
absolutely. Just to look at what we have in front of us. Beautiful. Okay. All right. This is frozen now. Okay. So, with legal notices, talk to us a little bit about what we will be sharing around legal notices, and is it going to be quite practical what people are learning so they can actually, physically buy one themselves?
Very, very, very practical. This is the thing that the pen is mightier than the sword. It's an old statement. And if you know how to use the pen, like, you are at a huge advantage. And many of you know, one of the most frightening things that happened over the last few years was the news that there was a new mandate out. And you see this document hit and everyone would freak out. And whereas, going back 500 years ago, the freaking out would hear there's an invading army with swords and machetes ready to fight. It's different now. The warfare, especially in the Western world, is not so much that, although occasionally that can happen. The big danger is that you get that mandate, which is the written sword, which is vicious and can cut you up, destroy your life, destroy your finances, destroy your freedom, and lock you down in your homes and get you locked up in centres. That's that, and it's that in itself is just as bad, really, as the physical, and if not worse, because mentally you can't see it, but you feel this invisible enemy. So it's about knowing how these things work, how to read them, because every time that these mandates and rules and laws, there's virtually just about 99.9% of the time, there's remedies and ways around it. I've only seen 2 laws in my life that really had no way around them, but I'm sure that Jesus wrote them. And, one of them was the payroll tax legislation in certain situations. The second one is a census. The census does have a couple of things, but nothing really straightforward. So I did find a way around it, but it was, you got to go a little bit more of an indirect route. So, But apart from those two things, just about everything else is ways around it. So it's learning those things, but also how to actually write your notices. It's really important how to write them. Like there's actually like 5 criteria that you put in and ways that you do it. And the moment you do that and serve these correctly, you'll be amazed what happens, how fast in 4 out of 5 situations, people jump to attention. Knowing how to stop bullying in schools and all kinds of stuff using them. And you've actually, I'll be teaching you to have your own sword and doing real life practical stuff with you. How to basically
when's the last time you used a legal notice, for example? Like give us an example, or you use it with a client or someone that you know.
I use them regularly. Like, gosh, so often, like even in business the other week, someone, you know, with my business partner gave a ridiculously unreasonable request for a refund when I looked into it. So we just replied them with a legal notice, and we referred to the provisions of the agreement and we wrote it in a certain way. And yeah, it just basically bang, it kills them. And you know straight away, but if it does go to court, you're going to win if you write it the right way. It's spending a fortune with a lawyer. Other examples where I've used them, I mean, over the years, I've used them with bullying and help with that. What
about husbands, Lauren? Can you use them on husbands?
Oh, husbands, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what you can use them on. My mum's best friend years ago, she had a guy who she dated, she met on a site, and he turned out to be a control freak and really horrible to her. And he's very rich and spent all his money on Europe. And when she broke up with him, he started serving notices on her to pay for all the costs of the date. And she was beside herself. It was terrible. Like my mum told me about it, and she said, you know, she doesn't know what to do. She's literally having a mental breakdown from it. And I said, oh, look, I'll help her out. So I just jumped in there, and I found instantly some flaws of his own notices, and I kind of had a bit of fun with the guy. I started hitting him with legal notices, basically calling out the first fact when his notice was issued under his company. And I said, are you trying to say that my client dated a company, like had a emotional sexual relationship with a company? Because if you do, and then of course I was able to give a legal notice on the debt collector he was using and said, are you actually involved in a breaching collection? Are you aware you're collecting for a company on a dating contract, which is obviously, you know, a vexatious, you know, action, and you could be liable as well now that you know. And that was it. He instantly fired the client. So the guy was left without a debt collector. And bit by bit, I knocked him out. Yeah. And then after a few times, he limply walked away. And I found out, like, literally, we found about a month later, he'd done this to 19 other women, and she was the first one who got free. So that was one of my feel-good moments, because these are all my pro bono stuff, which I did, you know, and it felt good and really good.
Amazing, amazing. Now that's so cool. Not for that lady, but that's great that you're able to do that. Okay, so big one, government mandates. Obviously, so many people were in a position where if they didn't do something, you know, they were lost their job or, you know, finances. If anything is to come again in this space, you know, talk to on the common law and what you're going to be able to teach people here in this space to be empowered so they don't have to be coerced or bullied.
Look, I don't promise a magic bullet. I like to be very truthful with people, as you know. I think a lot of courses do that. I do promise you that your life will be a lot easier because you'll at least know how to use the sword. You'll learn how to read them and learn to find the exemptions for yourself and ways around it. And every single mandate I saw issued, I found ways around it within minutes of reading it. And it's just reading the words. You just have to read the words of the statute, you know, and or the order. And ultimately, if you use the words of the order, number one, when you serve them or give them to government authorities or whatever, or even show them the businesses, you can, you know, you just basically there's ways around it. Like the cafe mandates, there were ways around it. The mask mandates, there were ways around it. The vaccine ones were harder, but there were ways around it, but it was harder. But there is ways around those ones too. I mean, everything had mandate, but I saw there was ways to deal with the mandate, and you just had to know how to deal with it. And not just legally, but practically. There's stuff that happens in the theoretical world and the real world, and knowing how to predict and calculate strategy. Like you remember, Jazz, I was saying all along, these mandates, particularly on the medical stuff, these aren't going to last more than 6 months, like 95% likely, simply because in history, there's never been one of these things gone more than 6 months as I could find. Yeah. And it lasted 6 months in WA pretty much exactly. And so I said, I just want to get their 80%. So a lot of it too is learning strategies as to what governments do, how they make laws and why they do it, and what's called percentage statistical algorithms they use to make sure they get elected. And that's all what it comes down to, getting elected. And so there's what I call the sovereign 10, 20% they don't really care about. You just want to be in that sovereign 10, 20%. And it's knowing how to get into that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Excellent. If someone in the team also could just put the link in the chat, we've got some people asking already for this course, that'd be great. All right, personal fines. This is probably my personal one, which I take a little bit personal. I've said it 3 times because I remember when I worked for Qantas, do you know I racked up about $12,000 worth of personal parking fines because I was always late for my flights. I would park on the side at the airport.
Yeah.
So fun times. I wish I knew all this stuff back then. Let's talk about personal fines because so many people get fined this day and they're trying to get out of it. Is this practical? Is there ways around this, or is this something just to learn more about in this space?
Look, the short answer and the honest answer is yes and no. There's some fines that are very, very hard to get out of. They used to be a lot easier. Like if I'd done this webinar 12 years ago, I could have pretty much shown you how to get out of almost just about any personal fine relatively easily. Yeah, and that was one of the things that the government said to me when they visited me. They actually said to me, we just don't want this going on. They actually changed the laws and procedures in court specifically to deal with me and a few other people. So, love it. So a lot of it, which is pretty cool in one sense, but they shut a lot of things off. So but in saying that, there were a lot of fines that come out, like the COVID fines. I was certain a lot of these could be dealt with pretty easily, and people have found this out. Most fines do have ways around them when you actually look into it, like even speeding and driving. You know, there's ways, like even with the way you shuffle the car ownership, and there are ways you can do it. There's ways you can ask for exemptions or ask to be let off for different reasons and the way you write your notice. And I do know from my experience in government, the kind of language they want to hear before they consider, you know, using their discretion to waive fines. And I've seen fines get waived discretionary when you say it in the right way. So, yeah, there's some fines there are ways to straight get out of, like voting fines are pretty straightforward. As an example, census fines are reasonably straightforward if you know how to deal with the system. Director's ID, again, I was pretty certain of ways around that. We'll be doing webinars on that one more next week as well, but that's next little while. But director's ID, there's ways, look, most fines do have ways around this. Some fines that are not so easy to get around, and you've more just got to find ways to be smart about it and things like that.
Absolutely. No, very good. Okay, let's get into some bullying and harassment. Not only is there bullying in the workplace, we've got schools, we've got home, we've got, I mean, look at everything that happened with COVID, family members. I mean, I have family members that were about to beat each other up because of what was going on. And, you know, it was really, really horrible actually to experience this worldwide, the black and white, what happened. But talk to us a little bit about this space, because I know you've had, you know, a lot of experience in this space yourself, Warren. Were bullied quite heavily yourself as a younger child, and you've come out of this. So talk to us on this. Yes,
I'm very, very, very passionate about bullying because, I was bullied in school, like quite heavily for quite a bit, mentally, mainly mentally. Physically, I was left alone a lot, but, you know, mentally, by and large, yes. So, I love to help. I've done a lot of pro bono stuff to help people around this area because it's so easy. This is an easy one to stop, you know, like in school bullying, workplace harassment. It's pretty straightforward to stop this if you know what to say, if you know your rights. If, you know, any school that tries to remotely not stop bullying in their school, there's a very simple legal notice that I'll be teaching that you can put straight away. And they'll absolutely wet their pants and they will stop it in record time because they're legally liable for distress and all kinds of stuff, you know, so they'll be legally liable. So, I'm very passionate. I've helped a lot of people. I helped because of my own experience and the trauma clearing I had to do myself, you know, like I had to do lots of it because it really affected me, affected the way I approached life. It affected my confidence. I was very naturally defensive and a bit aggressive. You know, I went through 3 stages of life, really. My first stage when I was disempowered, I kind of learned to fake empowerment. I did law to feel empowered, and it worked in that context. But in personal situations, I didn't feel empowered. And I would kind of, you know, I remember being bullied in the workplace by my secretary, and literally it's almost embarrassing. Like, she just walked over me and treated me like crap for about, and I'm like, this is like, I'm actually working in a job and feeling like an absolute embarrassment. And I finally stood up to it, and it was really good. And then I went through my own trauma clearing, but then I started learning to deal with it. Then I went the other extreme. When I found my empowerment, I started going around, taking on any government department, 5 cops at the same time, almost just smashing anything, being ultra aggressive. As soon as I felt that anyone was bullying me, I'd go the other extreme, and people were scared of me because of my strength. But then I went to stage 3, where as I learnt my rights, a bit like martial arts, I now realize I've got the black belt for 3rd, 4th dan in this area. I really, if anything, on the opposite, I try to be conciliatory, be soft, but I know I've got it there, you know. So now you just know how to stop it when you need to and help other people. And you'll be able to help your neighbors, your friends. I help my housekeeper, a lot of people with their kids being bullied. So it's a great skill to learn for yourself and for others in the workplace. When people harassing you, anything.
Yeah, I'm so passionate about that too. Honestly, it just breaks my heart, bullying. So Dr. Racine has just asked, and it's in relation to what you said, so where will you be speaking about the director's ID requirements and fines? She's interested in learning more. And she also said, thank you so much for all you do. So next week, aren't we speaking on it?
Yes.
With director's ID? Is it next week on our webinar?
Next week, you bet. Yes, I'll be doing that next week.
All right. So yeah, next week. So if you're a part of our newsletter and you get our emails, you'll be notified. Okay. All right. This is a really interesting one because there's the breakdown here of the federal, state, and your local. So are you going to be speaking on the difference between them all in terms of how we deal with them specifically? What are you actually going to be talking about in this space?
Right. This one is more just giving a bit of an introduction as to how these work and the kind of letters you can do with them, because again, councils is not a magic bullet, but you can, if you know your rights, get certain things addressed, you know, like if they've got, you know, poison being sprayed, if you've got various other kind of stuff happening, there's a lot you can do, you know, at least. Sometimes you've got to kind of play a long game. So keep in mind, sometimes you can get very quick results. Sometimes you've got to play a long game and just know the kind of notices and putting them on notice and then knowing the different pathways to go. But the thing is, it's just knowing how to deal with them. So it's mainly just teaching you practical stuff. Like, no, it's not going to be like, I know some get very excited when they hear Wayne Glue, you know, and a few others teaching about, you know, it's not lawful, constitution. And again, that's what I call a real world thing. In the real world, council, a lot of power, a lot of money, a lot of enforcement. So I just say, look, if you really don't want to pay that kind of stuff, you're better off to go live off grid, you know. If you're living in a local area, either that will be a very, very empowered fighter and be strong enough and do it on principle and, you know, and be ready for it, because you're not going to sit there and go, oh, yeah, no, we think it's all cool. We agree with you. So it's very much real world stuff that you can use that can make a difference. And, you know, for example, if you can't pay your rates and you're being chased, there are things you can do to significantly mitigate that and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff around that. Amazing.
Sandra just asked as well around the bullying session. Will you actually be including the online and social media as well? Like, will you discuss that if someone's being bullied online or social media?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that'll anything on bullying like that will be covered 100%.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've got another one here, private regulatory boards and licensing. So once again, I think we kind of discussed this, but this kind of brings in the banks as well, superannuation, general insurance and things like that. So if someone finds himself in trouble, I know you were sharing last week some hot tips with credit cards, debt. Are these things that you're going to be able to bring to light for people so they can be a little bit more empowered in this space? And if they found themselves in a sticky situation, they can hopefully get out.
So which slide are you on? Because you're, okay, so on banks, privacy. Yeah, just ask the question again, Jess.
Yeah, so I was just asking around, I know you shared, last week online around credit card, debt and things like that. And then you've got super and you've got general insurance. So if someone finds themselves in a little bit of trouble, or are you also going to kind of give the foundation of what each of these corporations play? And then if you find yourself in some trouble with them, how you can speak to them? Is this what you're going to be covering in this week?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the private regulatory boards and licensing goes back to what I was sharing a bit in the beginning. That goes back to dealing with, APRA, with, even tech like medical boards, Cairo, just that kind of stuff. And even dealing with bank kind of ombudsman and how that can become your thing, all that kind of stuff. So we might just, because I've covered that earlier on, I'll just quickly mention it again in summary and then we'll move on. But like the private regulatory boards, they're a whole different beast to say governments and statutes. Like generally, like if you're dealing with a government department, it's very different. you got really what I call three groups. You got genuine government departments, quasi-governments, and private regulatory boards. And I'll be covering about that. So like as an example of quasi-government is ASIC and the ATO, you know, they're quasi-governments, departments. And they are technically, they're actually private, but they masquerade as government. That's what I mean by quasi. They look like government, they sound like government, but they aren't. Like the Federal Reserve, like the Reserve Bank is a good example of that too. Then you've got the private regulatory boards and understanding their unique thing, which are very much private contract. And you could pretty much, a very good example of this is like ASIC or say to do with financial services licensing, which although they're quasi-government, you voluntarily get a license and people just assume I have to get a license. Not necessarily. I mean, you just got to look into it. And most of the time you don't, you know, if you know how to do things and know what you're doing. So people get licenses, they think they've got to get it. Another good example is marriage. You want to be a marriage celebrant, I've got to get licensed. Well, I married someone when I ran my church years ago, married a couple that's on the common law. I just set it up and we got them married on the common law. So there's nowhere that says I have to go and get licensed to be a marriage celebrant, only within the system. So there's just all that kind of stuff I'll be teaching.
Amazing. No, that's exciting. Great.
I love this stuff. It's cool. Yeah.
I know, me too. I'm excited to do it. All right. Personal debts. I think probably right now in 2023, the world is in trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. So that would probably say that many homes and many people are in personal debt. Yeah. So what is it specifically that, you know, you feel in this space that people really need to understand? Because obviously we need to take responsibility for our choices and decisions we make. But at the same time, I think that a lot of people can get treated quite unfairly and quite quickly and bullied in the space, right?
Yes. Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this one and the next one with banking and that kind of stuff. And the reason why is that as many have been predicting a recession, and look, even depending on what we label a recession, keep in mind interest rates have gone up alarmingly and they're going to go up probably more. And in 2023 alone, it's predicted that well over 1 million Australians are going to have their fixed rate mortgages expire and suddenly go from paying somewhere between 2.14 and 2.99% to suddenly on 3-year fixed mortgages to somewhere around about 6 to 7% even more. And I've had so many people who are friends talk to me like, what do I do? Like my interest rates are soaring. So suddenly for an Australian who's already maybe having challenges with the rising cost of fuel, the cost of this, the rising cost as everyone's having inflation. Inflation's at a record 8.3%. And that's really underquoted. They deliberately do things to make sure by changing the basket of goods to make it's much higher than that. I think we all know its price has gone up a lot more than that. But basically, for many people, that's going to break them. I'm predicting a wave of insolvencies financially and people in real distress. In fact, we're planning in the Global Wealth Club to start running a massive kind of education and work in helping people in that area because we predict it's going to be very, very big. A lot of businesses will go broke, a lot of people. I mean, because now that housing prices have gone crazy, people are suddenly paying a lot of money just to like get a house rather than 20, 30 years ago. You could buy a house very affordably. Now people, you know, they assess the loan on 10 times husband and wife's combined income, whereas it wasn't like that years ago. It was on one income, it was often even less. So people are literally, by and large, just barely covering their mortgages. So I'm predicting a huge amount. And then credit card on top of that. So I really want to teach people how to, one, deal with debt collectors because they know how to traumatize people by constant calls and the way they speak. There's ways that using legal notices, you can force the debt collectors to follow the law and not just give you the law, but give you payment plan on your terms. And I remember with a girlfriend I had years ago, I literally helped her where I forced a debt collector to accept $10 a week. And they said, we're not going to do it. And I said, well, you can go ahead and bankrupt her if you want or try, but you know, I've got the notices showing she's willing to make her fair effort. I've given you a copy of her finances. And I'm sure, I think you and I both know, number one, they will not only cost you money, but it's, you're not going to go too far in court when they see your oppressive tactics. And they very quickly said, okay, fine. Well, what do you propose? I said, 6 months, we're going to pay $10 a week. And then after that, I'll be happy to review it. He goes, okay, that's fine. Just put it in writing and make sure that you cover that, which I've been doing. So there's just little things like that. Dealing with debt collectors, you know, for example, if you know who to speak to in a bank and you can get access to some funds to pay it a bit quicker, we've got credit cards cut down by as much as 45%. Like a client who owed, I remember, 45,000. We managed to get it cut down to about 24,000 or something like that. I remember with my own debt, with a car finance company, when they were harassing me, knowing who to speak to, getting onto the correct media liaison officer, using an ombudsman, things like that. I forced this finance company to cut my debt down from 55 grand down to about 29 grand. And we just did an agreement. It's stuff like that. And showing this will save many people's financial lives. So I'm very excited about this.
Beautiful. Me too. Yep. Me too. All right. So once again, I think you just kind of spoke on this, but especially we have a lot of business owners that come to us. So talk a little bit about business debts and what is different between that versus your personal debt as well. Yeah.
So business debts. And I'm actually, with the personal debts, the one thing I forgot to mention was property. Sure. So with your, for example, you can stop a bank from foreclosing. Maybe just go back to it. Yeah. So you can actually stop the bank for up to 18 months, even 2 years, from foreclosing and taking your house off you when you can't pay your mortgage. You know, up to that. You can literally stop them up to 18 months. And I'm telling by my own experience with my own property when I did it for a bit of fun to see what happened. And I've known many people who've done it. So by knowing how to serve the legal notices back on the banks when they're hitting you with default notices, how to get the ombudsman involved, how to keep them accountable, get onto their hardship relief system, using notices that say if they don't respond properly, they're legally liable, and you can do all that. That's what I'll be teaching. So that'll save people's houses a lot of stress and pressure. So now we'll go to business debts, Jess, and you can ask it again.
Yeah, business debts. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you see it?
I can, yes. So ask me the question, this one.
Oh, sure. Okay. So with business debts, I think I was asking, is it going to be different in terms of what you're covering versus personal debt? And we obviously touched on with business debts before, a lot of insolvencies, a possibility. We've got, interest rates going up. So talk a little bit in this space, because we have a lot of business owners as well that come through to the Global Wealth Club.
Okay, yes. So with business, it's very different because many Australians run small businesses, and it can get very expensive when clients don't pay their money that they owe you, or when you're being harassed by the ATO for your BAS, you're being harassed by, suppliers and things like that. And many small businesses have that problem, and it will increase. And many business owners end up in trouble with the ATO or their super because they're not aware of their responsibilities and not sure how to deal with them. We're not sure how to manage it. So it'll be a very practical class teaching from two levels. Number one is when you owe money to people like the ATO or whatever else, and how to deal with them, how to get payment plans, how to, if worst case scenario, do genuine winding up within the law, which can give you a fresh start without going bankrupt and cut your debt right down legally. There's things you can do in certain situations. It used to be easier, but you still can do it if you know what you're doing. How to deal with debt collectors in your business, how to basically, so very specifically on that, and dealing with ATO, super, and just generally lease debts and all that kind of stuff. And secondly, how to collect money owed to you, because for many small businesses, if people aren't paying you, it can really hurt your business. So rather than spending lawyers and going to court, spending a fortune, there's simple ways. This will save you thousands of money in legal fees, lawyers, and pain. I'm telling you, with debt collectors, you'll be able to just about only use lawyers in very certain situations. You're gonna love this one if you're in business. This is a ripper.
So this is really interesting. And another one that I noticed, for example, like last week, I had a carpet cleaner over, and do you know, because it's not really set up to take prepayment, do you know so many people at the moment are just changing the price in which they've been quoted and just giving them what they think? I don't know if it's just because it's hard times right now, but I've heard another friend's business, they've done that. It's a cash, and they were owed $150, right? And this person just left them $60. The carpet cleaner's had so many people he's trying to chase up for money. It's ridiculous, and it's so disrespectful. So I think that's a really good point for you to mention, just really how to collect that money, make sure that you're kind of on top of that as well as a business owner.
It is, and there's just one other thing I want to throw in there, reminding of carpet cleaners. I got one in when I left my bath on about 9 months ago and flooded my bedroom, and I had someone come in, and they were good at first, but oh my gosh, they tried to overcharge me like you wouldn't believe. And they kind of pointed a clause in the contract I'd signed. Now, me knowing my stuff, I took one read of it and go, well, hang on a sec. There's bang, bang, bang. And I went through a few things, and I hit them with a legal notice. I just hit them back with one. And they very quickly got very shirty with me, and we did such a good job by you. And I said, no, you did. That's the only reason why I'm happy to pay you. Otherwise, I'd be being an absolute mongrel with you and cutting the debt right down. I can pull out all the clauses on you here and make your life very hard, but I'm going to pay you what I believe is fair. So I used it to do what was fair. And I said, what you're charging me is way too much. This is a fair price. I will pay this, even though technically it is an overcharge for what's happened. I accept that you did provide this, this, and this, even though it was an exorbitant price. I will agree to that. But these extra days you tried to sneak in there, forget it, not happening. And it's stuff like that. And even stopping a company who led us up the garden path with a bed. And of course, we use legal notices to force them to refund it so we could go somewhere else. So there's all this kind of stuff, or a disabled client with her gym equipment who we were able to basically make sure she got it within 24 hours by scaring the absolute bejesus out of the poor guys who were trying to be difficult with her. So
yeah, that's right. Well, you don't know what you don't know, right? So this is really about educating yourself. So yeah, awesome. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is a big one. A big one. The amount of people that are concerned with privacy, going dark, or one phone, another telephone, decentralization.
Look,
what's your experience in this space? Like, let's be real about it, Warren, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that's not proven right now. So what can you see in this space that's a reality for people to really be focused on, and what's important?
Look, I think there's a balanced perspective. I'm a big lover of the Tao. When the Tao teaches about everything being in balance, the Tao Te Ching, bit of a spiritual teaching, from great ancient Chinese wisdom and others like that. But there's a balance to this. Like, I call it the underwear principle. I'll be teaching about that. Obviously, because I do pole dancing, it's less of an issue for me because people see it when I'm doing it. But and I'm just joking that, but as you know, I do that for fitness and training. But
yes.
Basically, just by you not telling me what color underwear you're wearing, Jasmine, I could ask you what color knickers you're wearing. You'd probably say none of your business and be quite offended by that.
Right.
And it's not that you're trying to deliberately hide anything from me. It's just that, no, that's not anyone's business. You're not trying to do anything illegal or anything like that. Yeah. At the same token, if there's government laws around certain things, there's certain laws and things like that, which, like privacy, doesn't mean you're going to deliberately hide and go underground and wear dark glasses and run away and hide. Because I say to people, if you really want to say be completely private, get rid of your phone, get rid of getting your computer, go and pay for the world's best security, and get a Faraday cage and go and live off grid, that kind of stuff, which is a thing which covers you. So I said, what we'll be teaching is how to have your world within the system and within the matrix where it's disclosed, everyone knows about it, but how to create a world outside of it by knowing how to go dark on certain things. So yeah, your underwear principle, it's just no one else's business. It's that simple. Yeah. So basics on privacy, computer, digital privacy, personal privacy, all that kind of stuff. And your legal rights in regard to that. And you do have some.
Yeah, I like the way you have some. Not a lot, but some. So let's go with that.
No, but the heart, practically, Jasmine, there's a good reason for that. It's just, look, why we only have some rights is because most people want to participate in the system. They don't want to go live in a Faraday cage off grid. So you've got some, you're voluntarily giving it away. And look, I voluntarily give away some of my privacy rights by using smartphones and doing business. And I mean, hey, it grows my business, it grows my life. I can connect with more people. I voluntarily do it. But then where you want to be private, you have the right to do that. Like, you don't want to tell me what, and the whole viewers what underwear you're wearing. I mean, maybe you do, but I suspect you don't.
I'm not even going to ask that to people because you never know. They might let us know. Okay, let's talk practical. We get this all the time. Everyone's like, well, I've already got Harry in chat saying, we're going to have the documents to fill out.
Yes.
We're going to have practical stuff. So talk about this workshop and what's going to be covered. Is it a bit of everything summary and then just really making sure people know what to do?
Look, this is practical because playing it in the real world, we'll be teaching stuff and covering stuff, but then in the week 12, we're teaching practical stuff and giving you case study exercises to go through and do. And look, I'm also, depending on the interest in this, my plan is even after the course to actually offer an in-person one for people who want to really sit down and spend almost a whole day going through writing workshops, writing notices, and me walking around giving tips and that. And some of the stuff I can more easily share in a private kind of workshop. I'm going to offer that if there's enough interest, towards the end of the course. But this one, we will be giving you practical examples, homework, for you to come in there with some notices ready to go, and even giving you some on the spot, like little things. a bit of a kind of test and an exam and teaching you stuff in how to do this. So it's helping to use it in the real world. So we'll be covering that in the other classes, giving you examples, but then we'll actually give you real life case studies and things like that in this one here. And like I said, if there's enough interest, we'll even do a one-day workshop outside of this.
Yeah, brilliant. And Sandra's just asking if sessions are going to be recorded.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They will be recorded and you will have access to watch as many times. And Warren's going to answer.
Yes, it will be recorded, Sandra. And in fact, our plan, I'll just be very open. Our plan is to sell this eventually, down the track as an online automated course without me doing it live. But, this one, you will get me live. You will be able to ask questions in real time and things like that. But that's my eventual aim, because I think there's a huge need for people to be empowered with what's coming. I mean, and the smart people will be going, I need to get on this now. I learned from the whole last 3 years, and this time I'll be ready for it, And if that's not you, then don't come to the course and just take your luck when it happens. But if you know that the last few years was pretty damn bad and you want to be ready this time, then come along. It's that simple. I make no apologies. As I'll share at the end, we're deliberately making this ridiculously affordable to make sure anyone can come.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right. Money should not even be worried for this part. Okay, so in conclusion, what are your comments, Warren, about this course? Let's talk about, obviously it's 13 weeks. It starts tomorrow. It's going to be 4 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time. So if you're in other states, what else would you like to share with everyone here in regards to, why we are actually running this and why you're so passionate about it, and we'll all be there?
Oh, look, very, very easily. I'm very passionate to empower. And look, the whole COVID mandates really, really did kind of affect me a lot more, even though I stood, I could honestly hold my head high. I know that I helped many people. I was able to get through it pretty straightforwardly myself. I hurt for what I saw happen, because at the end of the day, it's like a wealthy person once said, it's not fun being very rich if you've got no friends to share with. And it's true. I mean, I'd like to see my state and see many free. And I remember the absolute horror for me of seeing people just comply in our state, not knowing what to do. And it affected me. I mean, every time, I may know my rights, but I still tensed up every time I went to a shop and knew someone was going to give me crap about something, just about this and that or whatever else. So it's what's driving me is to empower people, because I honestly think the only chance we've got of minimizing the possibility of a horrible new world order is to actually empower, where, through their social credits, you're being tracked, eventually possibly even microchipped. Now, many places you're doing palm prints, to actually, and facial recognition to pay things. It's an indirector's idea. It's very easy to see where this is heading, when eventually anything you're doing, if you get on the wrong side of the system, one stroke of a computer entry and you're in trouble, so I want to have some mitigation. I think to some degree, it's inevitable that there'll be some kind of thing, but I do believe if people are empowered enough to push back, there can be restrictions on this. Now, running and protesting and screaming, as we found out, doesn't work with a kind of communist new world order, but a large group of empowered people can. So that's why what's really driving this is, by nature, I'm a philanthropist and missionary is my background. Empowering, because we've got a better chance of empowering people than we have by protesting. That's my simple view. If people are empowered as a general collective, it increases the consciousness of the people. Politicians start to become a bit more mindful and more accountable, and a bit less hurried to quickly do things in. It makes a big difference. And I mean, we saw that in Florida when the people pushed back and were empowered when they first brought in lockdowns, and now Florida's a gold standard. So it's very much driven by empowering people, because my early life was not empowered, and really, the selfish reason is to benefit our society into a better world, so I can enjoy my country without sitting there thinking, goodness me, we've turned into some drone-run society flying around running us all. That's where this could head. So this is it.
Yeah, and look, Brian, I just want to make note, because I feel like a lot of people here will understand as well. When COVID happened and all these things and lockdowns and stuff like that, I think a lot of people just got so angry. And you have every right to be angry, but I think also people just got angry because they didn't know what to do. Yeah. They just didn't know how to solve their own problems of going out there in public, being faced with all of this. I can attest to that myself. I had moments of just pure rage, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. But I think more you learn, the more you are self-empowered, it's almost like it calms your spirit. And when you just know and you have that knowledge, it kind of centers you. So if you're someone as well that you feel that you're really enraged and you just, that can cause sickness in your body, as you know, anger, if it's not dealt with, in your liver and all those sorts of things. So if you are someone as well who's being really emotionally tormented through this period, this is the best course that you could do, because this is all about self-empowerment and really coming back to self and knowing and practicality as well. So I just wanted to share that. So our team are going to share the link once again. Thanks, Dr. Rosina. We've shared that with the other team members.